Hello everyone, it's me, Camila Arcalatero. For today's video, we're going to talk about drug abuse. I invited Miss Heshvanjanine Lorente Sabikel, and she is a graduate of BA Psychology in UP Cebu, earned units and master's degree in public administration in CNU, a former Cebu Diocesan Youth Coordinating Council and Social Communications Committee chairman. She is a HR practitioner by profession and a church and community youth leader. But because of schedule difficulties, I was not able to conduct this interview in a face-to-face setting. However, I sent her the questions and asked if she could take a video of her answer, and luckily, she agreed to it. Despite of the difficulties that we encountered, I still hope that you'll learn something. So, I guess I'll start with the first question. Miss Hashvanjani Lorente Sabikel, what factors might lead someone to start abusing drugs?
Alright, so before I answer the first question, allow me to just establish the difference between these two terms that are usually used interchangeably, and that is drug abuse and drug addiction. So, drug addiction is actually the result of drug abuse. So, basically speaking, the person or a person starts to use drugs perhaps out of curiosity, or I would say for recreational use, but then eventually he or she uses now the drug in a maladaptive way, if I may say, and more than what it is expected to be used. So basically, that's the time where the drug abuse starts, and then eventually it gets worse and turns into a drug addiction. Also, the difference between the two is when a person abuses drugs, when he or she decides to stop using it, then he or she will be able to still do it. There will be no major adjustment, so to speak, if that person so decides to stop using the drug. That's for drug abuse. For drug addiction, on the other hand, that person will find it relatively difficult to actually stop the use of drug, and he or she will continue to crave for it and look for it and use it despite knowing the possible negative effects of the drug. So that means to say that person will still continue to look for it or crave for it with much intensity. That person will find whatever way it would take so that he or she will be able to avail of the drug. So that's I would say the main difference between drug abuse and drug addiction. And to also add to that, in the point of view of psychology, actually, substance use disorder is somehow related to drug addiction. So the symptoms, the prognosis, diagnosis, more or less, is the same. Although this doesn't only focus on drug alone, the substance abuse disorder. But nevertheless, the drug is part of the substances, in this disorder. And to answer the question, actually, I would say that more or less probably the primary factor of drug abuse is actually curiosity. Together with that, of course, is according to the prognosis in the manual, the DSM-5 that we use in psychology, other factors or prognosis, as I would say, would be genetics. It can be hereditary. It can also be a person's gender. So most studies say that males are more prone to drug addiction as compared to females. And another factor would be the social environment of a person. If a person has experienced trauma, both physical and sexual trauma, that can be a factor that may lead to the exploration of the use of drugs. Of course, we know that the drugs that are used by those who abuse it actually make them feel good because, of course, what it does to a person's brain is that it strengthens, if I would say, the neural connection of a person's brain. Specifically, it's dopamine. So the dopamine is, of course, the person's pleasure neurotransmitter, and that, of course, that's what makes a person feel euphoric, or as we would say, it's high. So I think yes, those, but for me, primarily it's the person's curiosity that would actually be the first factor for a person to actually use drugs, and then eventually lead to abuse, and ultimately, of course, we have the drug addiction as a result. Just to also add to that, to the social environment part of drug abuse, we also have peer pressure, and also the presence of other family members, or rather history of family members who also use or abuse drugs. So those are some of the factors that may actually contribute to a person using or abusing drugs.
So thank you for that wonderful answer, me. So yeah, it's really important to differentiate the word drug abuse and the drug addiction. So my next question is, how does drug abuse affects a person's physical and mental health?
So of course, for the short-term effect of drugs, we already know about it, that the use of drugs actually make you feel good. It makes you feel euphoric. That's why people use it. It gives you pleasure. So the use of drugs is actually a very pleasurable experience for some people. That's why some people use it recreationally. But if you start to abuse or use the drug more than its prescribed dosage, if I may say that, it will actually give long-term effects on your body. There would be physical effects, like there would be a change in appearance, in your physical health as well. Perhaps your body, your system will actually deteriorate slowly. So that's one. Of course, physically, you look tired once the effect of the drug has already died down. There are also behavioral effects or changes that one person gets to experience. Some people get a little bit more irritated, restless, and the similar symptoms, and some people also experience the psychological effects of drug abuse. So some people experience hallucinations, they experience paranoia, among other things. But just to also let you know, the effects of drugs or the drug use or abuse is actually different from one person or another. Like for some people, when they use drugs, they tend to feel more active, they tend to feel more alive, while for some people, they would feel very sleepy, tired. That's what other people feel. And yeah, that's it. Basically, it may vary from one person to another, but of course, it affects them physically, behaviorally, and also psychologically. Apart from that, also in the long term, it also affects the relationships of that person. May it be at work or socially, with friends, with family. There will also be adverse effects of drugs that will be experienced by that person who actually abuses drugs.
So yes, there are a short-term and a long-term effects of drug abuse. So if you start to abuse or use the drugs more than the dosage that you need, it will eventually give a long-term effect of your body. So thank you for that, Miss. And for the next question is, what treatment options are available for drug abusers?
Well, as what I have mentioned earlier, for drug abuse, it may still be possible for that person to stop his or her maladaptive use or excessive use of the drug. So detoxification can still be effective, so as therapy. In my background, or in the way that we were taught in the university, we were always reminded that if that person still responds to therapy, then therapy would be the best treatment or option to go. For medications, on the other hand, medications actually will of course have negative effects on one's body. Like, the person will be dependent on the medications, who he or she will not be able to function if the medications will not be available. So that's why we were always taught that should therapy be an option, then it will be the first thing to do. Of course, for drug abusers, as we call it, or for those who are, who have experienced drug abuse, they can still respond or be treated with detoxification to begin with, and again, of course, therapy. Medications can be an option if that person is not responsive to any of the other treatments that I just mentioned earlier. And of course, the presence of support groups, that's also very important. And I would say, perhaps, educating the young people, or children at a very young age, about the effects of drugs, that would be very effective, of course. But as to the treatment, for those who have already done it, detoxification and therapy are options we can look into when it comes to dealing with those people.
Then, how can we support individuals recovering from drug abuse?
I think the best way to support people who abuse drugs is to actually accept them, because in the society, when people are tagged as drug users or abusers people tend to have a negative image on them already. So we must also realize that they are already struggling within themselves. So the way to support them is to, of course, first of all, accept that happened to them, and we help them by also educating ourselves and breaking the stigma on people who use and perhaps abuse drugs, and learn to understand them more and to teach our children or educate our children about it, and of course incorporating it in our education system, perhaps that these are the effects of the use of drugs, and for them to also be aware, both in the negative effects of the abuse of drugs, how it changes a person's mind, how it actually changes a person in general. I think that would be one of the ways, a few ways to actually support those people who are recovering addicts, or those people who are trying to stop the use of or the abuse of drugs. And of course, our presence and support to them would be very much helpful, and to always make sure that they feel still feel accepted as part of the society and as functioning individuals as well. And of course, by making available rehabilitation centers and treatment facilities where they would feel safe, and for them to also have support groups, both from people experiencing the same kind of things, for them to not feel alone, and for them to have people whom they share the same struggles with, and of course other people from the outside who actually understand, and for them to also feel supported, that people still believe that they have or that they deserve a second chance, or even no matter how many other chances that they need in life, and knowing that just some people really do believe that they will be able to overcome whatever it is that they have to overcome, especially in their struggle in stopping the use or abuse of drugs.
Yes, you're right. They still need to feel accepted as part of the society. So, for my next question is, how can we prevent drug abuse from occurring in the first place?
Well, this is a question that would be very difficult to answer, since we know that we can't really stop or even prevent even a tiny bit of it, because it has more or less been really a part of the society, and poverty has always been a problem of the society, and it has led people to actually sell or even use drugs or other substances. But I would say that education would be one of the things that we can do. At the very least, educate our children at a very young age about the negative effects of drugs from the use to abuse to drug addiction, it would be very important for us to make them understand um, its bad effects, from the physical to the behavioral, psychological, and even in our relational or social aspect of one's life, and to of course demand or ask from our government to actually provide for our people, starting from our very basic needs and the support, of course, that we need for our society to function at the very least. Yeah, I think those are a few things where we can start preventing the drug abuse to, you know, to proliferate in our society.
For the last question, Miss, how can we build stronger communities that are less susceptible to drug abuse?
Well, of course, let's talk about the very basic unit of the society, and that is within the family. So it's very important that families or parents educate their children as much as possible about the negative effects of drugs, both short-term and long-term effects, and how it negatively affects us and our bodies, not only our bodies but also our mental and physiological and psychological health, how it affects the people around us, and also again for the government to actually establish policies that would actually aid on that lack or on that need of the society. It's very important for us to demand or to ask of that from the government, and through those little efforts, may it be in the basic unit, in the family, or in the community at the barangay level, while there are actual efforts, of course, in the government, the local implementation of those prevention activities or efforts should still be strengthened, since those have not really reached to the main recipients yet. And of course, in our academies, in our schools, those are the most important aspects of a person's life that can possibly contribute to how a person sees, or how a community sees the use or even the abuse of drugs. And those are places where we can actually start to inculcate or to educate the children, so that we can slowly build our communities into a healthy one, into a society where the use or abuse of drugs is actually being prevented or stopped in a way.
Thank you for all of your answer, Miss. And everyone, I do hope that you learned something from our discussion for today. And I think that would be all. So, bye.